Hello and welcome. Settle in and let the sounds of your world begin to soften. Tonight, we journey back to a pivotal moment in the life of our planet. A single, fleeting instant, 66 million years ago, when the story of life on Earth came to a great and sudden crossroads. High above the warm blue waters of the ancient Gulf of Mexico, a cosmic appointment was kept. A traveler from the deep, dark ocean of space, an asteroid the size of a mountain, ended its long journey in a silent, brilliant flash, closing the long chapter of the dinosaurs and opening the door for the quiet, patient rise of the mammals, a path that would eventually lead to us. But what if that cosmic appointment was missed? What if that traveler had been on a slightly different path, passing by our world as a harmless shooting star in a prehistoric sky? What would have happened in the world that continued? In the millions of years that followed, what new forms of life and what new forms of mind might have emerged from the great, thriving Saurian dynasty? Tonight, we will gently explore this lost possibility. This is not a story of monsters, but a calm speculation on the nature of intelligence itself. It is a journey into a world that might have been, a world where the dominant minds on this planet were not human, but were born of the deep, ancient lineage of the dinosaurs. So, take a slow, deep breath. Let the noise of the present fade away and join us as we step into the world that continued. Let us begin not with a single creature, but with a world, a living, breathing, thriving world in its ultimate incarnation. We arrive in the final age of the dinosaurs, the late Cretaceous period, specifically the Maastrichtian age, just before its sudden, unexpected end. Imagine the very air itself. It is warmer, heavier, and richer in oxygen than the air you know. The entire planet is a greenhouse. There are no permanent ice caps, no vast, frozen polar wastes. Instead, lush, temperate forests, rich with life, stretch all the way into the high latitudes of the Arctic and Antarctic circles. The global climate is stable. The seasons are gentle transitions of wet and dry. It is a world optimized for life, a planetary garden that has been patiently cultivated by 150 million years of saurian evolution. Let us settle into a specific place and time, a vast, forested floodplain in what would one day become North America in the late afternoon. The light of the setting sun is a deep honey gold, filtering down through a dense canopy and painting the forest floor in shifting patterns of shadow and light. The trees here are both familiar and alien. Towering conifers, ancestors of redwoods and pines, stand like silent cathedrals, their bark thick and ancient. Beside them are immense, flowering magnolia trees, their blossoms the size of dinner plates, releasing a faint, sweet perfume into the humid air. Ancient, resilient ginkgos, their fan-shaped leaves, a brilliant yellow, form groves along the banks of a wide, slow-moving river. The undergrowth is a deep, humid world of green, a thick carpet of ferns of 1,000 varieties. Hardy cycads, with their sharp, spiny leaves, and giant horsetails standing in dense thickets. The air is filled with a symphony of natural sounds. Listen closely and let them become your world. There is the persistent, gentle hum of insects, larger and more varied than our own. Dragonflies with iridescent wings flit over the river's surface. There is the soft rustle and creak of immense leaves and branches swaying in the warm breeze. In the distance, a deep, resonant, almost musical call echoes through the trees. It is a herd of hadrosaurs, the great duck-billed dinosaurs, their strange, hollow crests amplifying their communications across miles of forest. It is not a roar of aggression, but the sound of a community moving together. It is the sound of a world in perfect, ancient balance. The smell of this world is rich, deeply organic, the loamy scent of damp earth, a soil enriched by millions of years of growth and decay. The sweet, sharp perfume of magnolia blossoms and the tank of resin dripping from the bark of wounded conifers. Through this ancient forest, life moves on a scale that humbles the imagination. A family of triceratops, with their immense bony frills and 3 formidable horns, moves slowly through a clearing. They are not monsters of aggression. They are gentle, placid giants, ancient, deliberate gardeners of this world. And yet this rich and vibrant world is but a single valley, a single floodplain on a planet teeming with endless variations of life. Let our perspective now rise, gently, silently. We drift above the immense canopy of the forest, above the crowns of the ancient conifers. The slow-moving river becomes a silver ribbon winding through a sea of green. The great dinosaurs become small, moving specks of gray and brown. Higher still, until the vast curve of the earth itself becomes visible, a soft blue haze at the distant horizon. From this vantage point, we can witness the full, breathtaking majesty of the world that continued. To the south, on the landmass that will become South America, truly colossal titans move across vast, open plains. These are the titanosaurs, the largest land animals ever to live their long necks, reaching for the treetops, their footsteps, a slow rhythmic drumbeat on the ancient earth, a sound so deep it is felt more than it is heard. Across the globe, in what will one day be the Gobi Desert of Asia, the ecosystem is different, drier, more arid, a land of scrubby vegetation and sandstone mesas. Here, herds of protoceratops gather around shrinking waterholes, while small, feathered dinosaurs, agile and intelligent, hunt in coordinated packs through the dunes. And in the oceans, life is just as spectacular. The great inland sea that splits North America is a warm, shallow paradise for marine reptiles. Enormous mosasaurs, the apex predators of the sea, hunt giant fish and ammonites in the depths, while long-necked plesiosaurs glide gracefully through the sunlit upper waters. Giant sea turtles, the size of small cars, paddle slowly towards ancient nesting beaches. Life is everywhere, thriving. Let us return our focus to the North American forest as night begins to fall. The deep gold of the afternoon softens to a gentle orange, then a deep violet. The sounds of the day creatures fade, replaced by a new chorus, the chirping of strange, prehistoric crickets, the soft calls of nocturnal birds, and the quiet rustling in the undergrowth of the small mammals, our own distant, shrew-like ancestors, emerging from their burrows to forage in the relative safety of the darkness. The larger dinosaurs settle down, their immense bodies finding rest in sheltered groves. The air cools, and a gentle mist rises from the river. Above, the sky is a brilliant, unfamiliar tapestry of stars, the constellations of a forgotten age, with the bright band of the Milky Way stretching from horizon to horizon, unobscured by any artificial light. This was the world, stable, complex, ancient, and thriving, from pole to pole, from the seafloor to the sky. It was not a world in decline, not a static or dying world waiting for an ending. It was a world at its absolute peak, the culmination of a dynasty that had ruled the earth for 1,000 times longer than our own species has existed. It was a world perfectly primed, rich with complexity and boundless energy, for the next slow, patient, and perhaps remarkable step of evolution. In this vast and ancient world, teeming with titans and ruled by magnificent predators, the grand story of evolution was not only being written in the language of size and strength, in the quiet spaces, in the deep shadows of the giant ferns, in the twilight hours between the setting and the rising of the sun. Another kind of evolution was taking place, a quieter, more subtle, and perhaps more profound evolution, the evolution of the mind. Let us narrow our perspective now, our focus zooming in from a planetary scale to the forest floor. We look past the great herds and the apex hunters and into the undergrowth. Here we find a remarkable family of dinosaurs known as the dromaeosaurids, a group that includes the famous velociraptor. But we must set aside the monstrous images of popular fiction. These were not giant, scaly beasts. They were elegant, bird-like creatures. The line between bird and dinosaur was, in this family, beautifully blurred. They were covered in a coat of complex feathers, not for flight, but for insulation against the cool of the night, for elaborate courtship displays, and for sheltering their young from the rain. They were warm-blooded, active, and moved with a swift, fluid grace. They possessed a sharp, sickle-shaped claw on each foot, a tool not for slashing wildly, but for pinning down struggling prey with the precision of a surgeon. The fossil record suggests that many of them lived and hunted in coordinated social groups, a pack, a family. This alone, the ability to cooperate, to communicate through subtle shifts in posture and soft calls, to strategize. A hunt is a significant step on the long and winding path to higher intelligence. But within this gifted family, one particular genus stands out as the most promising, the most intriguing candidate for the spark of something truly special. A small dinosaur, perhaps as tall as a person, but lightly built, with long, slender legs. It is known as the name means wounding tooth, a name given for its unusual, serrated teeth. But its true advantage, the secret to its success, was not in its bite, nor in its claws. It was in the remarkable engine of thought, protected within its delicate, bird-like skull. Troodon possessed the largest brain, relative to its body size, of any known dinosaur, and it is not even close. We can measure this using a concept known as the encephalization quotient, or EQ. It is a measure of how much larger a brain is than what would be expected for an animal of its size. Most dinosaurs had brains just large enough to run their immense bodies. Their EQs were low. But Troodon's was exceptionally high, 6 times larger than a typical dinosaur's. Its ratio was comparable to that of modern, highly intelligent birds, like crows and parrots, and even some primitive primates. Let us pause to consider what this means. This extra brain capacity was not for basic motor functions. It was for processing, for memory, for strategy. It was for creating a complex, detailed internal map of its world. An ability to remember the location of nesting sites, the seasonal movements of prey, the patrol routes of a distant tyrannosaur. It was the foundation for foresight, the ability to learn from the past and, perhaps, to plan for the future. With a brain so large, social interactions would become richer, filled with hierarchy, cooperation, and perhaps even the beginnings of a simple pack culture, where learned hunting techniques could be passed from one generation to the next. Now, let us try to imagine the world through the senses of a Troodon as it moves silently through the Cretaceous night. Its most striking feature would be its eyes. They were enormous, forward-facing, and possessed a vast capacity for gathering light. This was a creature built for a world of shadows. As the sun set and the great daytime dinosaurs settled into slumber, the world of the Troodon was just beginning. Through its eyes, the moonlit forest was not a place of darkness, but a detailed, three-dimensional tapestry of silver and gray. Its stereoscopic vision allowed it to perceive depth with perfect accuracy, to judge the leap of a small mammal or the distance to a branch in a heartbeat. And it did not navigate this world by sight alone. Its brain dedicated significant power to processing sound. Its inner ear was highly advanced, and the asymmetrical placement of its ear openings, much like a modern owl, gave it an astonishing ability to hunt by sound alone. Imagine it standing perfectly still, a feathered statue in the moonlight, its head tilting, its entire consciousness a map of the soundscape around it. It can hear the almost silent scuttling of a beetle under a leaf. It can distinguish the sound of the wind from the faint heartbeat of a tiny mammal sleeping in a burrow beneath the soil. It could see with sound, and finally, consider its hands. At the end of its long, slender arms were 3-fingered hands with long, elegant, grasping digits. Crucially, one of these fingers was partially opposable, allowing for a level of dexterity and manipulation that was a rarity in its world. We can picture it using these hands not just for combat, but with a delicate, inquisitive touch, to gently brush away leaves from a clutch of eggs, to hold a struggling lizard with one hand while dispatching it with the other. Let us imagine it encountering a problem. Grubs buried deep in a rotten log. It might use its delicate fingers to pull away the soft wood, and perhaps even pick up a nearby stick to probe into a crevice, its claws cannot reach. This is not the creation of a tool, not yet. But it is the behavior of a problem solver, a mind that can see a connection between an object and a goal. Here, in this one creature, a perfect evolutionary storm had gathered. A complex social life that demanded communication, keen three-dimensional senses for navigating a complex world, hands capable of interacting with that world with precision, and, above all, a brain with the capacity and complexity to integrate it all into a rich internal consciousness. This was not just another animal driven by instinct, surviving day to day. In the Truden, we can see the fragile, hopeful convergence of all the necessary ingredients for a different kind of mind. A creature that carried within it not only the blueprint for survival, but the latent, brilliant spark of curiosity, of memory, of advanced awareness. The great asteroid was still a distant, silent traveler, an unseen and unknown variable in this equation of life. Down here, on the warm, thriving Earth, the stage was set. The world was stable and rich, and a candidate of astonishing promise was already walking through its moonlit forests, its large eyes reflecting the light of unfamiliar stars. All that was needed was time. The final ingredient was time. In our history, that time was cut short by a cataclysm from the heavens. But in the world that continued, there was no cataclysm. 66 million years ago, the cosmic appointment was missed. The mountain of rock and ice passed silently by. On the earth below, the sun set on the Maastrichtian age, and it rose again on the Paleocene, and nothing had changed. The great, slow, patient rhythm of life continued its beat unbroken. Let us now step forward into this unbroken timeline. We are not moving by days or years, but by millions of years. But the continued reign of the dinosaurs. The world changes, the climate shifts, continents continue their slow waltz. But the Saurian dynasty endures, adapts, and evolves. And in the moonlit forests and quiet grasslands of this alternate world, the Truden lineage also continues its journey. With the pressures of survival still present, but with no great reset, no slate wiped clean, their evolution continues down its promising path. The brain that was already large grows larger. The senses that were already keen become keener. The social bonds that were already strong become stronger. Our own intelligence, our consciousness, was forged in the specific crucible of primate evolution. It is a mind of grasping hands that explored the three-dimensional world of the treetops. A mind of forward-facing eyes that learned to judge the distance from branch to branch. A mind that eventually developed a complex symbolic language to navigate intricate social structures. The saurian mind, the mind of the creature we might call the dinosauroid, would be born of a different legacy. It would be a predator's mind, a nocturnal mind, a bird's mind. Let us try to imagine the quality of this consciousness. Your own inner world is likely dominated by a stream of words, an internal monologue. But would a dinosauroid think in words? Perhaps not, at least not at first. Their consciousness might be a far more sensory and integrated experience. Imagine their inner world as a constantly updating, three-dimensional map of their surroundings, woven not from abstract thoughts, but from a rich and continuous flow of sensory data. It is a map built from the silver-gray light of the moon, providing perfect depth perception. It is a map built from the echoes of sound, the rustle of a leaf, the snap of a twig, each sound pinpointed with absolute precision. It is a map built from the scent of the cool night air, the smell of rain on stone, the trail of prey that passed hours ago. Their thoughts might not be sentences, but complex, layered simulations. A memory of a hunt would not be a story told in words, but a perfect sensory reliving of the event, the sight, the sound, the smell, the feeling of the chase. Planning a future hunt might be the act of running a dozen different sensory simulations, testing potential outcomes in their mind's eye before ever taking a step. Their emotional landscape would also be different. The core drives of survival, hunger, and reproduction would be there. But their social emotions would be built upon the foundation of a cooperative pack hunter, a profound, instinctual loyalty to the clan, a deep, shared understanding that survival depends on the group. Perhaps they would feel less of the individualistic anxiety that defines so much of the primate experience, and more of a collective, communal consciousness. And from this unique mind, a new kind of society would begin to form. The hunting pack, a temporary alliance for the purpose of a meal, would slowly evolve into a more permanent and complex structure. A clan. Communication would be the key, but again, we must not assume it would be a language like our own. Picture a clan of these intelligent dinosaurs interacting at their nesting site. They communicate through a rich and complex tapestry of signals. There is a language of sound, a vocabulary of soft chirps, clicks, whistles, and deep, resonant calls, each with a specific meaning. But this is only one layer. There is also a language of posture, a subtle dance of movement that conveys intent, submission, or dominance. And there is a language of their feathers. Imagine them covered in intricate plumage, able to ripple and position their feathers in specific ways. A flattened crest might signal calmness, a flared ruff around the neck, a warning, the flashing of a brightly colored patch of feathers under the wing, a specific signal to a mate or a juvenile. It is a language that is seen and felt as much as it is heard. Within the clan, the larger brains would allow for the birth of culture, the transfer of knowledge beyond simple instinct. Older, more experienced individuals would be the repositories of the clan's wisdom, the best routes through a territory, the specific technique for hunting a difficult prey animal, the knowledge of which plants are toxic and which have medicinal properties. And where would such a society live? They would not build cities of stone and mortar, not in the way we might imagine. Their architecture, like their minds, would be more organic, more integrated with the natural world. Picture a sheltered canyon, its walls pocked with natural caves. Over generations, a clan might enlarge these caves, weaving intricate, multi-chambered nests and dwellings out of fallen branches, tough vines, and mud, much like their distant avian cousins, but on a grand and sophisticated scale. These would not be individual homes, but a communal warren, a shared living space for the entire clan, interconnected and defended, a testament to their collective social nature. This is the dawn of the saurian mind, a slow, quiet awakening over millions of years of uninterrupted peace, a consciousness built on senses we can only dream of, and a society built on a foundation of deep instinctual cooperation. A mind that can map its world, that can remember the past and simulate the future, will eventually seek to do more than just navigate its environment. It will seek to shape it. A society that can communicate and transfer knowledge will inevitably begin to build upon that knowledge, creating a legacy of craft and invention. This is the birth of technology, but we must, once again, release our human assumptions. The path of technology is not a single predetermined road. Our own technological journey was shaped by our specific needs and limitations. As primates, we lacked the natural weapons of claws and sharp teeth, and so we flaked stones to create them. We lacked the protection of a thick hide or a coat of feathers, and so we learned to master fire for warmth and to process animal skins for clothing. Our technology is a story of compensation. The dinosauroid, however, was born a formidable predator. It was swift, agile, and armed with natural weapons. It was insulated by a warm coat of feathers. Its needs were different, and so its technology would be different. It would be a technology not of compensation, but of enhancement, an extension of its natural grace and predatory elegance. It is possible that they would have largely skipped a stone age as we conceive of it. The percussive, forceful act of chipping flint to create an axe head might be less intuitive to their slender, bird-like hands. Their first great technological leap might have been more subtle, more organic. Imagine, in the quiet communal space of their canyon dwelling, a dinosauroid at work, its long, delicate fingers, guided by a mind of immense spatial awareness, are not striking stones together, they are weaving. Their first great mastery might have been over the world of fibers, the tough, pliable vines that snake through the forest floor, the strong sinews of their prey, the fibrous bark of certain trees. They would learn to process these materials, to twist them into cordage of remarkable strength and complexity. With this simple, fundamental technology of rope, their world would be transformed. They could weave intricate nets to catch fish in the rivers with an efficiency that solitary hunting could never match. They could create complex snares and traps to catch small prey, freeing up time and energy. They could weave strong, lightweight baskets to carry their young, or to gather the seasonal fruits and nuts their growing minds had learned to map. They could create ropes for climbing to safer nesting sites, or for securing and strengthening their woven dwellings against the storms of the changing seasons. Theirs would be a technology of weaving, of tying, of interconnecting. From here, their skills with wood and bone would grow. Using abrasive sandstones, they would learn to sharpen branches into lightweight spears, not for close combat, but for hunting from a safer distance. They would carve the bones of their prey into fine, sharp needles and awls, allowing for more intricate work, for punching holes in tough hides to create shelters or simple clothing for the colder months. But their greatest technological divergence, the path that would truly set them apart from humanity's own, might be in the realm of biology itself. As creatures born of a 150-million-year-old ecosystem, their deepest understanding would be of life. Their greatest science might have been biotechnology. Instead of the human model of agriculture, of clearing vast forests to plant neat rows of a single vulnerable crop, a symbiosis with the world around them. With their deep knowledge of the forest, they would learn to cultivate it, to selectively prune certain plants, to encourage the growth of energy-rich tubers, to clear the immediate area around a grove of fruit-bearing trees, to protect it from pests. They would learn the medicinal properties of 1,000 different leaves and roots, cultivating them in sheltered, communal gardens. Their agriculture would be a subtle, guiding hand upon an existing ecosystem, not its replacement. And they would learn to cultivate not just plants, but other forms of life. Imagine their dwellings at night, lit not by the harsh, flickering flame of a torch, but by a soft, cool, and living light. They could learn to cultivate bioluminescent fungi or bacteria, painting it on the woven walls of their nests to create a gentle, steady, and beautiful glow. Their nights would be filled with a soft, ethereal, and completely silent light. And what of fire? For any terrestrial intelligence, fire is the great test. For millennia, they would have known it only as a force of terror, a destructive monster born from a lightning strike. But their immense curiosity would have driven them to study it from a safe distance, to understand its hunger, its warmth, its power. The great leap would be learning to manage it, to capture a burning branch from a forest fire, to keep it alive in a sheltered stone hearth, to feed it, and to learn its secrets. With the mastery of fire, their world would change again. They could cook their food, unlocking more nutrients and making it safer to eat. They could harden the tips of their wooden spears, making them far more deadly. And they could use the smoke to preserve meat, allowing them to store food for leaner times. Fire would be their first true foray into the world of chemistry. And from that, perhaps after millions more years, they might have turned their attention to the stones, not for chipping, but for melting. Metallurgy, their lightweight bodies, may not have been suited to the immense labor of mining as we know it, but they might have learned to recognize and collect the heavy, mineral-rich ores from riverbeds. Using fire and perhaps bellows made of hide, they could have learned to smelt copper, then tin, then to combine them into the miracle of bronze. Their metal creations would likely not be the heavy swords and armor of human history. They might create delicate, leaf-shaped spearheads, razor-sharp and lightweight, or fine, strong wire to reinforce their great woven structures. or intricate tools, not for war, but for the delicate work of their biological sciences. And so, their technological path unfolds, a gentle, organic, and deeply integrated journey. A civilization whose tools are made of vine and bone, whose agriculture is a partnership with the forest, and whose cities are living, breathing structures, lit by a cool, living light. It would be a technology of symbiosis, not of conquest. A quiet and profound mastery, born of a mind that saw itself not as separate from nature, but as its most curious and capable child. We have just walked through the silent canyons and woven dwellings of a world that might have been. We have imagined a civilization whose technology was a quiet partnership with nature, whose cities were living things, and whose light was born of life itself. It is a beautiful, harmonious, and deeply compelling vision of a different path for intelligence on Earth. But now we must leave this imagined world and step back into our own reality, becoming the geologists of a distant future, looking back. We must ask the hard and humbling question: if this gentle saurian civilization thrived for millions of years, and then, for reasons of its own, eventually faded away, what evidence would it leave behind? What would survive the immense 66 million year journey through the deep abyss of geological time to reach us today? This is the archaeological puzzle, and to solve it, we must first consider the very nature of their civilization in contrast to our own. Our human history is written in materials of defiance. We built with stone, with fired brick, with concrete and steel. We created a geology of our own, a world of right angles and perfect circles, forms that are profoundly alien to the fractal patterns of nature. Even our refuse is a testament to permanence. A shard of pottery, a glass bottle, a plastic container. These materials are a chemical puzzle for the biosphere, designed to resist the patient forces of decay for centuries or millennia. Our legacy is intended to be stubborn, but the dinosauroid civilization, as we have envisioned it, built with life itself. Their technology was one of cooperation, not defiance. Their dwellings were woven from vines and branches that were still living. Their tools were carved from wood and bone. Their ropes were made of sinew, their baskets from reeds. Theirs was a biodegradable technology, a material culture born of the forest and designed, unconsciously, to one day return to it. Let us imagine one of their great communal canyon nests. At the moment, it is finally abandoned. The last of its inhabitants moves on, and a deep silence falls. What is the fate of this beautiful, organic structure? In the first year, the changes are subtle. The vibrant green of the living vines woven into the structure fades to a soft brown. Sunlight and rain begin to bleach the intricate carvings on a wooden totem. But other life is already at work. A network of fungi in beautiful, intricate patterns of white and orange begins to spread across the damp wood, its enzymes gently starting the long, slow process of dissolution. By the end of the first century, the structure is unrecognizable. The great woven walls, weakened from within, have collapsed into soft, fibrous mounds. Insects, termites, and beetles, The great recyclers of the forest have worked their way through every part of the dwelling. It is no longer a work of architecture, but a feast for the ecosystem. Young saplings, their seeds dropped by birds, have already begun to take root in the nutrient-rich heart of what was once a communal living space. The process is not one of destruction, it is one of reclamation. By the end of the first millennium, all visible surface evidence is gone. The forest has completely reclaimed its own. The nutrients that were once locked away in the civilization's creations have been fully reabsorbed. The carbon that formed a carved spear is now part of a towering magnolia tree. The calcium that formed a polished bone needle is now part of the shell of a forest snail. In a profound way, their civilization never truly left the great cycle of life and death. It simply dissolved back into it. This is the great recycling. A civilization built from the forest is ultimately reabsorbed by the forest, leaving no ruins, no rubble, only a slightly richer soil. Even their form of agriculture would leave a quiet ghost. Human agriculture leaves an unmistakable scar in the geological record. A pollen signature. In the sediment of ancient lakes, one can see the exact moment when the diverse pollen of a forest suddenly vanishes, replaced by a monolithic spike in the pollen of a single crop, like corn or wheat. It is a clear sign of deforestation and monoculture. But the Dinosauroids' symbiotic gardening would leave no such scar. They managed their world, they did not replace it. The pollen record would simply show a healthy, diverse forest, perhaps with a subtle, long-term increase in the prevalence of certain fruit-bearing trees. It is a signature so gentle, it would be indistinguishable from a natural climate shift. So, for any trace of them to survive, it would require a geological miracle. A single woven basket dropped into the dark, oxygen-free mud of a deep swamp. A carved bone, all lost in a tar pit. In these rare, anoxic environments, the agents of decay are held at bay. Buried quickly under layers of silt and leaf litter, these objects might have a chance to fossilize, their organic substance slowly replaced by hardy minerals, their shape preserved in stone. But for every one artifact that might win this geological lottery, billions of others would simply vanish. They would be eaten, they would rot, they would dissolve. Their absence in the fossil record is not a mystery. It is the natural, expected outcome of a civilization that built its world in harmony with the great, patient, and hungry cycles of life itself. We have concluded, with a certain quiet reverence, that a civilization built in symbiosis with its world would leave a ghost of almost perfect subtlety. Its organic nature would ensure its swift and total return to the biosphere. Its memory would be carried in the living forest, not the dead stone. But let us engage in one final layer of speculation. A great what-if within our what-if. What if their long, harmonious, biological phase was just the beginning? What if, after millions of years of quiet cultivation and organic craft, their insatiable curiosity, the gift of their oversized brains, led them down a different path, a path of fire, of chemistry, of industry? Could they, too, have discovered the immense energy of the ancient buried sunlight? Could they have begun to burn the coal and oil of a world far more ancient than their own? If they did, then they would have left a more familiar signature. A sudden, sharp spike in light carbon isotopes would appear in the rock record, telling the story of a global, industrial awakening. A layer of black shale might signal the warming of their oceans. In this, their ghost would begin to resemble our own. But even here, there would be subtle, profound differences. Their industrial age would be built upon a foundation of biotechnology. Perhaps they would have no need for the vast array of synthetic polymers that will define our own geological layer. Their sediment would be missing the molecular fossils of plastic. Their industrial signature would be, perhaps, a cleaner one. And what of the final, unambiguous signature, the radioactive one? Would a mind that evolved in such deep connection with the rhythms of life ever choose to unlock the violent, chaotic power of the atom? This is a question we cannot answer. Perhaps their deep understanding of genetics and the delicate machinery of the cell would have given them a profound instinctual respect for the integrity of life, making them view induced radioactivity as the ultimate taboo. Or, perhaps, their endless curiosity would have made it an irresistible final frontier of knowledge. Their nuclear legacy remains a deep and silent mystery. But let us assume the strongest possible case. Let us imagine that they did have a full-blown industrial phase. They burned fossil fuels. They smelted metals on a vast scale, leaving behind clear and durable chemical traces in the rock. Now we must face the ultimate filter, the final and greatest agent of erasure. The 66 million year journey from their time to ours. This is a span of time that is difficult for the human mind to hold. 66 million years. It is more than 20 times the distance that separates us from our earliest hominid ancestors, the Australopithecines. It is an abyss of time so vast that entire oceans can be born and destroyed, and entire mountain ranges can be raised up and worn down to dust. Even the most durable chemical signature, locked away in a seemingly permanent layer of stone, would have to survive this immense and violent journey. Consider the signature left in the sediments of the deep ocean. As we have learned, the ocean floor is a great conveyor belt. Over 66 million years, a vast portion of the seafloor that existed in the time of the dinosauroids would have been slowly, inexorably pulled down into the Earth's mantle at subduction zones. Any record it held, any chemical anomaly, would have been returned to the planet's inner fire and completely unmade. And the signature that was preserved on the continents would face its own trials. 66 million years is more than enough time for continental plates to drift, to collide, to tear apart. A quiet sedimentary basin holding the precious record of their existence could have been caught in a slow-motion collision between two continents, buried 30 miles deep, cooked at 1,000 degrees. The rock would be squeezed, stretched, and metamorphosed, its delicate chemical story overwritten by the brutal story of pressure and heat. And even if a piece of this record survived, by some miracle, both subduction and metamorphism, it would still be subject to the endless, patient work of erosion. For 66 million years, wind and rain and ice have been wearing down the continents, carrying them grain by grain to the sea. The archaeological puzzle, therefore, is a challenge of two layers. The first is the nature of the civilization itself. For what was likely most of its long history, it was a quiet, organic, and biodegradable society, leaving a footprint so light it would have been erased by the forest in a handful of millennia. The second is the profound, overwhelming power of deep time. The 66 million year gap is a chasm of geological violence and decay, a filter so effective that only the faintest and most ambiguous of traces could ever be expected to pass through. And so, we are left with a quiet and strangely beautiful possibility. Perhaps the absence of evidence is not, in this case, evidence of absence. Perhaps the silence in the geological record is, in fact, the ultimate testament to the nature of their success. A civilization that lives in balance with its world for millions of years, and then, for reasons we can never know, fades away, leaves behind not a scar, not a chemical fever, but a healthy, thriving planet. Perhaps their true legacy is not a ruin or a fossil, but the very world that followed them. A world they did not exhaust, a world whose future they did not consume, a world left whole, ready for the next great chapter in the story of life. And so, our search for the world that continued comes to a close in a place of deep and profound silence. We have journeyed through a timeline of what might have been, envisioning a different kind of mind, a different kind of civilization, born from the ancient lineage of the dinosaurs. And in our search for their legacy in our own world, we found that the silence in the geological record is not an empty void. It is, perhaps, the most eloquent story of all. It is the story of a civilization whose greatest achievement was its lightness of being, a society that lived within the great cycles of its world and, when its time was done, returned to them as gently as a falling leaf returns to the forest floor. The echo of their possibility is not a shout, but a whisper. And that whisper speaks of the nature of intelligence itself. Throughout our own history, we have often viewed intelligence as a single, linear path, a ladder of progress with ourselves at the very top. But the quiet ghost of the dinosauroid suggests another way. Theirs was a mind born of the predator's focus, the bird's senses, the pack's cooperation. It was a consciousness woven from sound and moonlight, from social bonds and a deep, instinctual connection to the living world. Our own mind was born of the primate's hands, the savannah's challenges, and the profound, abstracting power of symbolic language. One is not a failed version of the other. They are two different, beautiful, and valid expressions of the universe's capacity for self-awareness. Their path was one of integration. Ours has often been one of separation. They learned to cultivate their world. We have learned to conquer it. This is not a judgment. It is an observation, a reflection offered by the mirror of deep time. Their story asks us a gentle, silent question. Is intelligence merely a tool for survival and expansion, or can it also be a tool for balance, for symbiosis, for quiet, long-term endurance? We will never know the answer, because the fate of their world, the fate of that entire possibility, was decided not by their intelligence or their technology, but by a simple, terrible, and utterly impartial law of the cosmos, the law of chance. Let us return, one last time, to that moment 66 million years ago. Picture the world we have spent so long imagining, the great, thriving forests, the deep, living oceans, and in the quiet canyons, the woven, bioluminescent dwellings of the saurian clans, their minds filled with complex, sensory thoughts, their culture growing richer with every passing millennium. And then picture a single dark point in the sky, growing imperceptibly brighter. A traveler from the asteroid belt, on a journey for billions of years, its trajectory determined by the faint, gravitational nudges of distant planets. It knew nothing of the world it was approaching. It was simply a piece of rock and ice, keeping a cosmic appointment. In the grand story of life on Earth, this was the great filter. A random event of such magnitude that it rendered millions of years of evolutionary progress, of adaptation, of growing intelligence, utterly meaningless. The dice were rolled, and the world was wiped clean. This is, perhaps, the most humbling and most calming realization of all. Our own existence, the very fact that you are here, now, listening to these words, is not the result of some grand, predetermined destiny. It is not the inevitable outcome of evolution's long march. It is the result of an accident, a spectacular, improbable, and beautiful accident. We are here because a piece of rock, 66 million years ago, happened to be in one particular place in the solar system, and not another. We are the children of that chance event. The path of our evolution was only made possible by the abrupt and total closure of another. And so, as we bring our journey to a close, let us rest in this thought. Let the silence of their lost world bring a sense of peace to our own. The deep past is a quiet place, filled with the echoes of lost possibilities, and our future is an unwritten page. Our transience, our fleeting moment in the sun, is not a source of fear. It is the source of our preciousness. We are just one possible way for a world to think. A single, brief, and complex note in an ancient and unfinished song. The universe is vast, and the story of life is far older and stranger than we can ever fully know. By contemplating the worlds that might have been, we can better appreciate the profound, improbable gift of the world that is. The echoes of the lost dinosaurs are all around us, in the deep silence of the rocks, and in the quiet darkness between the stars. And now it is time to let that silence hold you. It is time to let the echoes fade. It is time to rest.